Today, I'm going to be reviewing Ghostbusters Cross Men in Black, Ecto-Terrestrial Invasion. As always, let me give you an overhead view of the table so you have an idea of how much space the game takes up on the table itself. Keep in mind that this is an early scenario, and there are scenarios that take a lot more space than what you see before you right now. I also want to take this opportunity to take a look at the rulebook itself. One of the first things I actually want to bring to your attention is how beautiful the art looks. As you're reading through the actual rulebook, you're going to be able to find some really beautifully illustrated pictures with so much vibrant colors. I mean, it was a joy to actually go through this book and see everything that was inside it. It was very clearly laid out. I mean, there were a few things that you did have to go back and forth overall, but I didn't have a problem really learning how to play this game at all. In the back of the rulebook, you're going to see a player reference. Now, this is going to be the actual first knock that I'm going to give this game. And it's this player reference is great. It's really well done. However, when it comes to getting a player reference for the players themselves, it's this card that's given. The only thing is that the only phase that is given to the players are the player phase. There is no phase for the enemies. So when you have to do the hot sheets phase and the enemy movements, that doesn't show up here. So both sides, it's the same player phase. I felt that was just a weird choice. Why not put the enemy phase in the back? But other than that, the rulebook was really well done. And when it comes to the scenario book, let me talk about that really quick. The scenario book does a great job showing you how to set up each and every scenario you'll be going on. It's very easy to follow, and you'll have no problem jumping into the game. One thing that actually surprised me is the story itself. Even though it's silly, I really did like what they did with the story. I enjoy the setup for the game's story. A spaceship crashes into the Ghostbusters firehouse, damaging the containment unit, which causes a hybrid of aliens and ghosts to spread across the city. The story in this game was really well done, but how did the components fare? I also want to take the time to talk about the insert. I like how there's enough room on both sides of the insert to be able to fit every single card in the game sleeved. I wish more games did this. Another thing I want to point out are the components themselves. Everything from the miniatures to the dice and the dice tower, and I just really enjoyed every single component that this game had. Nothing felt cheap. It didn't feel like they cut corners or anything. It just felt like a very well-made product. With that said, I'm going to give you a quick overview of what the game plays like and then move on to my thoughts. I'm going to walk you through an entire round so you understand what a player phase, a hot sheets phase, and an ecto-terrestrial phase looks like while you're playing the game. While playing solo, you get to choose one Ghostbuster and one Men in Black character. You're able to take 6 actions in which you share between both of your characters. You could take a movement action, which allows you to move your character adjacent orthogonally 1 space. You can interact with the closed door to open it. Once a door is opened, if on the other side there is an inactive spawn point, it immediately becomes activated. Once activated, when playing solo, roll 2 tower dice. The results would determine which ETs you spawn on that active spawn point. You can use an action to pick up a gadget. Once you pick up a gadget, remove the token from the board and draw a gadget card from the deck, adding it to your character card. You can use an action to pick up an objective, placing it on your character card as well. You may use an action to interact with an objective. The results of interacting with an objective changes depending on which scenario you're taking on. You can use an action to use a gadget that you own on your character card. If a character is knocked down, you can use an action to stand them back up. Your character cannot attack or use an action when knocked down. You can use an action to teleport from one active spawn point to another active spawn point. Teleporting causes your character to receive 1 damage that you can negate by rolling 1 success. However, if you roll anything other than a success, your character will receive 1 point of damage. As an action, if 2 characters are close, which means at most they're 1 square away, you can pass an objective from one character to another character. You're allowed 1 attack action per turn. However, you need to either attack before you use up your actions or after you've used up your actions, but not in between using actions. Unless you use a double attack, only 1 character attacks per turn. Your weapon card shows you your range, how many dice you get to roll during the attack, and how many batteries that attack uses. The results let you know which enemies you're going to be allowed to damage. Here's a quick reference on which dice damages which enemies. Also, if you roll a success, that's a wild dice and can damage any enemy. Use damage tokens to place them on the base of the enemies you've damaged. The amount of HP each enemy has is referenced on the enemy card. Once you've damaged its full amount of HP, you've defeated the enemy. Once an enemy is defeated, it's removed from the board, a ghost trap is added to your character card, and you increase your points up by 1 if it's a grunt or a shooter, and by 2 if it's a drainer that was defeated. Another attack that you could do is called a double attack. When playing solo, you could use 4 of your actions to have both of your characters attack separately. Now, you could do 2 actions and then use a double attack, or you can do a double attack and then use your 2 actions. The choice is yours. The final attack option you can make is called crossing the streams. When you're doing a double attack and both of your characters are aiming at the same square of enemies, all enemies in that square are knocked down. Be careful because if friendly characters are there, friendly characters are also knocked down. You also add any other effects that happen normally, like damage. I'll cover how resting works after I talk about the Ecto-Terrestrial phase. During the Hot Sheets phase, you're going to reveal a card from the Hot Sheets deck. Resolve whatever effect is on that card. On the upper left corner of the card, you're going to see a symbol. Increase the PKE level for the symbol of the ET that matches the symbol on the card. If the PKE level of any ET ever reaches level 3, a psychokinetic disruption occurs. Pull a panel out of the firehouse. If any dice fall from that firehouse, it creates a psychokinetic disruption. Once that's done, reset the PKE levels of every ET back down to 0. For every dice that fell from the firehouse, you must choose any active spawn point on the board. From there, spawn the appropriate ETs that match the symbols from the dice that fell from the firehouse. During the Ecto-Terrestrial phase, each ET will move 1 space closer to our heroes. From there, if our heroes are within range from the ETs will attempt to attack our heroes. Our heroes attempt to defend by rolling their hero dice. For every symbol that matches the ET that is attacking them, they defend and prevent that damage. For each point of damage that was not defended, our characters will receive 1 damage. If a character is ever defeated due to damage, you must remove that character from the board and place them on the character sheet. Any objective marker that was on the character sheet will be placed on the board in the same space in which the character was defeated. Any traps that are on the character sheets will get discarded. For every trap discarded this way, 1 tower dice will be placed inside the firehouse. If a dice comes out of the firehouse this way, you must choose any active spawn point and spawn the appropriate ET that matches the symbol on the die. Then your team loses 2 points from their team point tracker. Then place a wound token on top of the hot sheet deck. In the next hot sheets phase, you're going to have to reveal an extra hot sheet card for every wound token on the hot sheets deck. During the player phase, you can forfeit your entire turn, and that allows your team to do what's called resting. During a rest, you can return any defeated hero to any starting location, or you could place them on a square with another hero or adjacent to another hero. And if ever both heroes are defeated at the same time, you return them both to one starting location. You also get to fully recharge the batteries of both your teammates. Apart from that, any traps that are on any character sheet will then be turned in, discarded, and you'll get to gain points equal to amount of tokens that were discarded this way. You gain 1 point for each trap discarded. Finally, gain 1 gadget card and place it on your character sheet. When playing solo, you actually get a new action called Single Hero Rest. As long as one of those characters has not attacked during their turn, you get to use 3 actions to perform a rest. Single Hero Rest follows the same exact rules as regular resting. The only difference is that once you've finished all the steps of resting, you do not get to draw an extra gadget card. Players keep completing rounds until a win condition or a failure condition is triggered. Now, I know that seemed like a lot, but if you go back to that reference in the back of the rulebook, this game's rules are very, very simple. And once you kind of get in the groove of the game, the rounds kind of start flying by really, really quickly. I do want to add that the games can last anywhere between an hour and a half and 2 hours, depending how well you know the game and which scenario you're playing. I'd also like to add that although the game is overall really, really easy to learn how to play, because it really is. There's a lot of really cool things, like I had mentioned earlier, the line of sight of the bad guys. I also like how you have to take into consideration where you move your character, because if you end up moving your character within line of sight, you're going to get attacked and have to roll your hero dice to try to defend from those attacks by matching the logo of whatever enemy is attacking you. But it just adds to the strategy of the overall game. You're not really just running around willy-nilly just trying to get the objectives and completing them. You're actually thinking about how you're going to walk around that map, which enemies you should try to defeat, and which enemies, quite frankly, sometimes you just have to run and go straight for the objective. I like the options that this game just offers you. Everything from your gadget cards to your weapon cards and just the general actions that you have to take in general really made me feel like the game was never felt dull. There was not a dull moment. And another thing, I played this game several times. I played it both single player and cooperatively with my son. And the difference between that really is that there's a lot of take that, which could be kind of fun, but it could be annoying depending how you may feel about that. You could put your cooperative partner into really, really tough situations, and it's kind of funny when you're doing it, but at the same time it's like a jerk thing to do, because you're trying to actually work together to get the objective done. Now the difference between cooperative and solo cooperative is that when you're playing solo, you remove every card. In this case, these are the hot deck cards that has the 2+ symbol on there. And the same thing with the gadget cards. You remove the gadget cards that have the 2+ symbol on them when you want to play solo. Other than that, I just want to mention, and I'm so happy to report that playing solo doesn't take away pretty much anything. Yeah, it takes that away, but the core game experience of completing the objective, it feels great no matter how you play it. In a way, I kind of rather play it solo because you're focusing on the task at hand. And let me tell you, it gets crazy here. Things get really, really hectic. And throwing that take that mechanic into the mix can really throw a wrench in your plans. And it could really create terrible, terrible situations. So in a way, like the terrible things that are really already happen as in its normal gameplay, that you just have to focus on the task at hand when you're playing solo. So I kind of like that. There's goods on both parts, but my point being that it doesn't matter which way you play this game, you're going to enjoy it. It does a really, really good job, whether you're playing solo or with other people. The game can also get really tense whenever you have to drop dice into the actual firehouse's dice tower. Anytime you're like, is something gonna roll out? Because every time something rolls out, you have to spawn whatever logo or side of that dice or die fall from that dice tower. You're gonna have to spawn them and all the active points, and you get to choose, and that's kind of a good thing. But wow, depending where you are in the game and what you're trying to accomplish, that is an absolute nail-biting experience. When every time that happens, I'm kind of freaking out. I'm like, oh man, oh please don't ruin me right now. I'm doing what I need to do here, and if anything goes, anything gets in the way, it could just throw my plan out the door, and I'm in big trouble. And that sense kind of was what was fun about this whole game. If you look here, I mean, Ray was dead. He was knocked out, and my agent Jay, he was the one that saved the day. I just went running. I was like, go, go. But it was that sense of excitement that I think I really appreciated in Ghostbusters Cross Men in Black. Honestly, I wasn't expecting it, but it turned out to be a rather fun experience. I also wanted to add that the way that the scenario works is really cool. I like how you go from one scenario to a boss to another scenario and then another boss, and it works really well. By the way, if you buy the game, it's actually going to have a 4th episode included in it. It's called The Gruesome Twosome. My point being that I really did enjoy the way the scenario was put together. Also, apart from that, every time you beat a scenario, you get points. In a solo game, you get $4 plus $1 for every 5 points that you get rounded down. So as you see here, like I actually went all the way to 25, and then I started over, and I ended up, you get 25 plus, right? So I ended up getting for my first game $10. Okay, so I had $10 to spend, which then you end up placing, and I'm going to move this over here so you could get a look at it. You end up putting a market out on the table, and the market consists of 6 equipment cards and 4 weapon cards, and you just start purchasing them. So then they actually carry over, and you get to add them for your next mission, your next scenario, and you just add them to whichever Ghostbuster it belongs to, because like here on the upper right corner, you'll see which faction the card belongs to. And I just enjoy that progression from this game. I want to say it was unexpected. I want to call it an unexpected feature, and I think because of that, I ended up enjoying it even more. And just in case you're wondering what my son thought about the game, I'm gonna paraphrase what he said. He said, "The game is a 10." I was like, "Really? A 10? You give this game a 10?" And he's like, "Yeah, but it was a little bit too long. It took about 2 hours. So because of that, I'm gonna give it an 8.5. But overall, the game was great." That's what my son said. Me, I enjoyed it. I really had fun with it. I don't really give number scores because that's just a really I just say whether or not I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed it. But if you were curious of what my son thought, that's more or less what he said to me. Now I do want to add one thing that I didn't like during the game, and it's the way damage is dealt. So every time you cause a grunt or a shooter or a drainer to receive damage, you have to grab a wound token and place it at the base of that figure of that enemy. Now my problem comes when you have to move them. You just have to make sure and be very careful that you actually move them with all the damage that was placed on it. And I felt that that was a little fiddly. And I wish it would have been done differently. Now, to be honest, I don't know how they could have done it differently, but when there's a lot of enemies in one square and they all have different damage attached to it, it's hard to you just have to be very careful and have patience when you're moving them. I mean, it's not a deal breaker, but it is something that I wanted to bring up to your attention because I was feeling that while I was playing the game. I ended up replaying this particular scenario only because this is the scenario I decided to show on the review, because the other scenarios are very, very unique from one another, especially the boss fights. And I don't want to spoil anything because it's kind of really cool. It really is. I like the way the maps changed. I like the situations that are placed or put upon you. It all works so well. And it's part of the entertainment value that I personally got from playing this game. And if you can't tell, I really, really did enjoy my time with Ghostbusters Cross Men in Black. I'm very, very happy with it. I love the component quality. I love the rule book, the scenario book. There's also a storybook that I have in the box. I just the card quality. I sleeve everything, but the card quality was decent. My point is that this game surpassed pretty much any expectations I had for it. I don't know what I was expecting, but I don't think I was expecting to enjoy it as much as I did enjoy it. And one cool little thing, I think the one really big plus in this game is back when I was younger, when I was a kid, I had the Sega Genesis and I had Ghostbusters for it. And that Ghostbusters game was like a chibi character version of Ghostbusters. And I don't know if that honestly has something to do with the enjoyment that I have had playing this game, but wow, that nostalgia that I had of running around with those chibi Ghostbusters on the Sega Genesis, and I remember beating that game so many times as a kid, and it was a tough game, but I think that had a lot to do with my enjoyment of this game. It reminded me of it. Quite frankly, this reminded me of the Sega Genesis Ghostbusters, and I really, really had a blast playing this. Whether you're playing it solo, whether you're playing it with friends and family, I think that this game, if you're into board games, especially if you're into either Ghostbusters or Men in Black, honestly, I think this is a no-brainer. It's an absolute must-buy. I'm very, very happy that I have it in my collection, and it's gonna stay there and it's not going anywhere. I know I gave you a lot of information. I hope you were able to get some a better idea of what this game's about, because I really haven't seen a lot of information on this game. So if I did anything, I hope at the very least I was able to give you an idea of how this game is. Well, with that said, I just want to say thank you so much for spending some time with me. This was Solo Board Gaming Night, and I hope you all have a great game night.